It's the warmest of welcome back to Matchbook's NFL podcast. We're doing well, guys. Let's recap. Week 1, 3 best bets in the books. Week 2, what do you know? Wash, rinse, and repeat. All best bets landing. If only it was just this easy every week, gentlemen. We only have another 22 odd shows to go. Let's have a look at those winners. Let's do a quick recap of those winners. Some good ones, let me tell you. Suma, Bills -3, never in doubt. Well done. Colts +4, Drew Dinsick, slightly more in doubt. When I saw Jacob Eason towards the end throwing around these laterals, I was like, don't make it happen. Don't let it happen. And Rob Pizzola, a very easy one as well for you. Pats, Jets, under 42.5. Of course, we had some other winners on the card as well. There was 9 bets in total selected. We had 6 winners. The other winners, Drew, you didn't really like these ones, but they came up. Vikings +4.5, great show. Should have probably won that game outright. Pats -5.5, no doubt there as well. And Rob Pizzola, great show from you with the Titans +5.5 at 1.94. Drew Dinsick, what did you take away from last week?
Well, the results were kind of all over the place, honestly. There were some heavily bet sides that really never had a chance. That was surprising. Usually when the market is that decisive on a couple of sides kind of midweek, and then you get additional support late in the week. I'm thinking specifically of the Bengals side. I'm thinking of the Eagles side. Those sides never really had a chance. Similarly, Pittsburgh. I was on Pittsburgh, and in hindsight, the cluster injury on the D lines certainly impacted the way that game played out. But injuries were the main takeaway coming out of week 2. Certainly the 4, maybe 5 new starting quarterbacks to try to evaluate this week. That's a very tough thing to do on the fly, as we are still trying to evaluate our priors on these teams. So there's going to be probably quite a lot of uncertainty as we head into week 3. And it's going to be interesting to see what these fellas have to say.
Yeah, Suma, I didn't mention there, actually, you had the Chiefs team total. We didn't have them up that early in the week, so we didn't lock them in, but that was another easy win. What did you take away from last week, mate? I know on your Slack channel it was pretty vibrant as ever, but good week.
I would say, even though I won that Buffalo -3 on my best bet, I was actually quite concerned with the Bills offense, to be honest. I know last week we talked about them. We have no issues going forward. It was just a sucker game against a very good defensive line. But against Miami, it was basically, let's say, almost the same output, just with a much better game flow. Josh Allen just had to do what he needed to be done against that Jacoby Brissett Tua Tagovailoa offense. But other than that, I might revoke my stand from last week a little bit, to be honest.
But that's all right. And Rob Pizzola, we're allowed to change our mind. There's no point getting too stubborn in your views. Anything else? Have you changed your mind on any teams even after 2 weeks, or have you gone a different direction?
I think 2 weeks is really not enough. It's the point where we're starting to look and say, okay, maybe this team is not as good as we thought, or maybe they are better than we thought, and things of that nature. But I think through 2 weeks, it's very difficult to make that conclusion. For me, I'm just very, very interested, as someone who bets totals pretty regularly, in what the scoring environment is going to look like for the league this year. And I had the hypothesis going into the year that it's going to settle somewhere between last season and the previous year. And that's kind of what we're seeing so far. A little bit shaded more towards last season, but the game is just completely different this year. And you really have to monitor these trends early on in the year, because offensive holding is definitely being called again at a rate that was much more similar to the pre-COVID season. Yeah. However, we're also seeing defensive pass interference at a pretty epic rate right now as well, which kind of offsets that a bit. So that's what I'm keeping my eye on. My takeaway is that we're probably going to get something very close to last year's scoring environment, maybe just a touch lower.
All right. Let me tell you guys about the sign-up offer we have. And it's just for Matchbook NFL podcasts, folks. You're just that special to us. Use the bonus code NFL20 when signing up at matchbook.com. You got to put 20 down, and you got a free 20 quid bet as well. It's a pretty decent one, all things considered. The bonus code, like I said, is NFL20 when signing up to avail of this offer. And the URL is there on screen, as you can see, matchbook.com/promo/NFL20 to get more details of that offer. Just before we get into the games, if you are watching this content on YouTube, please do give us a thumbs up and click the subscribe button. It always helps Drew Dinsick, as you know. It helps the old algorithms. And if you're listening to us on the podcast, you don't want to look at our faces, please leave us a favorable review if you are enjoying this content. And in all honesty, you wouldn't be listening to it if you weren't enjoying it. And hopefully you're enjoying having these couple of winners in the first couple of weeks. All right, first game we're going to talk about is definitely my favorite game of the week. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Los Angeles Rams, current money line as we see it at Matchbook. The early money has been all for the Bucs. They've been backed into 1.83. The Rams at 2.14 on the money line. The main handicap line at the moment as we have it, the Rams getting a 1.5 point start at even money there, 2.0. And 55.5, it's not that surprising. It's a high total in LA on Sunday evening. Suma, why are we backing the Bucs? Make the case for Tampa Bay.
So first of all, I think that we are getting a discount on the best team in the league right now. Usually NFL markets adjust very well for the best teams at the top. Like last week, we had that adjustment on Tampa Bay laying 12.5 points against Atlanta. After the look-ahead line was only minus 9.5. But in this one, I truly believe that the market is overrating the Rams a little bit. So going into the season, the Bucs were my second best team. I have adjusted the Chiefs a little bit downwards after right now, and I had the Rams somewhere around 8th or 9th best in the league. But it was a pretty decent gap between two teams. And then after 2 weeks, we saw the Bucs beating the Cowboys despite going 0-3 on turnovers, and they hammered the Falcons last week. And that was all despite not producing any real big plays. So big plays are still lacking in that offense, despite Tom Brady playing at an absurdly high level right now. They have incredible weapons all around, and they are probably still underperforming a little bit. So there's nothing why I would change my view on the Bucs. I still think there's some more ceiling for that offense to achieve. And on the other side, the Rams beat up against a Bears team led by Andy Dalton, who tried to dink and dunk his way up to the end zone, which didn't work out. And last week, they could have lost against the Colts very easily. Drew had a phenomenal bet, I think, on Colts +4. And that shouldn't have been that close in the end, in my opinion. The Colts moved the ball very well down the field. They had 2 turnovers at the goal line. One was the crazy shovel pass from Carson Wentz. One was the turnover on 4th down. And if we exclude these 2 plays, Carson Wentz was averaging 0.26 EPA per play last week against the Rams defense, despite having a bad foot, spraining both of his ankles, and dealing with very poor offensive line play. So I think that the Rams defense is nowhere near close where it was last year. Aside from Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey, they don't really have any more, or let's say many impact players. And I just don't see how they get many stops against the Bucs offense that I expect to roll down the field all night long. Even if they put Jalen Ramsey on one wide receiver, you probably still have Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, and Rob Gronkowski running wild. So I just don't see that the Rams can provide any good matchup for the Bucs offense. And on the other side, I still think that we are a little bit too high on the Rams offense. Matthew Stafford has never been that elite quarterback. They looked really good through 2 games, but they are now facing the best run defense in the league. McVay likes to stay balanced. He wants to run the ball and use play action off of it. So if Todd Bowles takes away that run game, that is one element of that offense that is absolutely shut down. And then you have Matthew Stafford throwing the ball at an, let's say, 70-80% clip to keep pace with Tom Brady and the Bucs offense. And that way, I'm easily taking the Bucs here. Disclaimer, I got Pick'em and +1, I guess. So a mix of moneyline, Pick'em, and +1. It has moved to, I think, -2 it was. I would still take the Bucs very easily. In my opinion, that number should be -3. I'm way higher on the Bucs. I'm probably lower than the Rams, than the market. And Tom Brady and the Bucs at a pick'em, I had to take it.
And Drew Dinsick, you also played him at a pick'em. We would suggest he's probably not going to get back there, but I would imagine you would echo a lot of what Suma was saying there.
Yeah, no, I thought that breakdown, is pretty spot on coming from my perspective on this. And actually, I know I'm high on the Bucs relative to market. I know I'm low on the Rams relative to market, and I only have this at 2.5. So the fact that Suma says it's 3, I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't feel like I'm totally out of line here. But no, honestly, there are a lot of matchup advantages even beyond what kind of the fundamentals of this handicap that Suma broke down very eloquently there. And I would point to specifically the fact that if you have multiple weapons in the passing game, there are soft spots in this defense that you can attack if you are Tampa Bay and you are looking at this Rams defense. And honestly, the fact that they have such an embarrassment of riches in the passing game is perfect. The idea that you can go away from Ramsey all day long is ideal. The idea that you can put your strong interior pass pro on Aaron, 2-3 hats if you have to on Aaron Donald, keep Tom Brady upright, and pick apart this defense, I think is very, very exciting for me as a Tampa Bay backer. And a lot of people point to or at least I've been looking for kind of the blue team here. Obviously I'm on red team, but I've been looking for the blue team case, and people are pointing to, well, last year's line closed this. It was in Tampa. Rams won. And honestly, that was a really, really different team. The offensive concepts hadn't really matured under Tom Brady and to that point in the season. And even that game was a little bit fluky. I guess the last thing I can add is I am also in agreement that's all of this to do about Matt Stafford through 2 games this season is really tough for me to get on board with at all. By far the most important player to this point on the Rams offense has been Cooper Kupp, and it hasn't been close. That guy can get open. That guy's done a great job of kind of making some game-breaking plays, but I would expect with the Todd Bowles being a little bit more aggressive in terms of his trying to get after the passer, that the opportunities for sort of those broken plays being there are going to be there because Stafford's going to be on his back. So I love this matchup for the Bucs, and honestly, I worry a little bit about the total getting bet up and getting to 56, considering I think this could get away from them.
Rob Pizzola, Tom Brady on a mission. I thought he was on a mission last season, but whatever the beyond the mission is, I think it's looking kind of ominous. And it's never a great guy to go against when he's in this kind of form.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, throughout his entire career, Brady's played 330 games. He's covered 196 of them against the spread. That's almost 60%. It's unprecedented. So whenever you can bet on Brady in this type of pick'em range, for sure, I think it's worth a look. I'll piggyback off a lot of what both Suma and Drew have said, but I think the one unit in this game that is heavily overrated is the Rams defense. And I think coming into the year, obviously they put up some really good defensive numbers last year, but they had a very easy strength of schedule against opposing quarterbacks. They lose their defensive coordinator in the offseason. And you look at what they've done so far this season, if we strip out garbage time, and I define garbage time as when one of the teams in the game has at least a 90% chance of winning, we take out those garbage plays, they're just 18th in the league in defensive success rate right now. And they've played Andy Dalton, Carson Wentz. And to me, that is a absolutely huge warning sign going forwards for this team. And if you look at them specifically against the pass, they give up a 51% success rate to opposing teams, whereas the Bucs on offense have the 5th best passing success rate in the league right now. So I see huge matchup advantages for Tampa Bay here. At the end of the day, the Rams also do have some matchup advantages on offense, but it comes down to me trusting Tom Brady more than I trust Matthew Stafford. And I think this is kind of a bargain price right here, right now. So I agree with the other guys. I like the Bucs.
Suma, wrap it up for us. You wanted to come back in with one more point.
I want to add something because Drew mentioned that after last year's matchup, the Bucs scheme on offense basically evolved even more to the version where it's now. And something I looked up this morning, over 2 weeks this season, the Bucs have the highest early down passing rate in the league, the highest, and they are using motion at a 60% clip, which is also top 5. So we have Tom Brady playing at a very high level. We have arguably the best skill position group in the league. and they are also doing everything right from a play calling and scheme perspective. So, yeah, I can really see how the Rams defense can generate lots of stops here.
Yeah, so in summation, it's Bucs or nothing here, guys. They're currently available 1.83 on the money line at matchbook.com, which is 5 to 6 in fraction terms. So let's take that. Bucs straight up at 1.83. Don't forget, you can check out all the recaps of each game and this additional bets and best bets at insights.matchbook.com, about 2 or 3 hours post-recording each Wednesday afternoon. All right, next game we're looking at, Packers and Niners primetime game in Santa Clara. 1.59, you can back the 49ers on the money line. The Packers at 2.6. The main handicap line at the moment is 3.5 at 1.92. And 50.5 is the main total, slightly shaded towards the under. Rob Pizzola, to you on that total, you like either the over or the under here?
Yeah, I think the over is worth a look. Now, I should preface this by saying, obviously, a lot of the value has been sucked out of the market in the last day or so. 3 major services who have are capable of moving markets all, I think, released the Packers over in the course of an hour yesterday at some point. So you saw this number really steam up. And typically, I don't want to advise getting the worst of the number, but because so many of these people are on the same side, I think it's very unlikely that this number comes back down. And I honestly wholeheartedly agree with it. I think last week we kind of whiffed, or at least I did personally, with the San Fran Philly over. I watched that game in full. The Eagles' defensive line just absolutely dominated the 49ers' offensive line to the point where I guess Jimmy G just really couldn't do what he wanted to do in that game until Brandon Graham got injured. The Packers have a very different style of defense, one that is not really capable of dominating at the line of scrimmage. So I would kind of throw away last week's game against the Eagles where the 49ers struggled. We've seen the Packers defense so far this year. It was very soft in the first half against the Lions. And we've seen the Packers defense really buckle when they face this 49ers offense in the past under Kyle Shanahan, where the Niners just basically run the ball down their throats and they can't do anything to stop it. I don't see the personnel on the field for Green Bay that's going to be able to change this. And then on the other side of things, you got to look at the matchup with Green Bay having Aaron Rodgers and the 49ers just lacking cornerbacks right now. They have, one of the positions of weakness right now in the entire team is cornerback. And I think Green Bay is able to attack that. So personally, I do see a lot of points in this game. I mean, I have a slight lean to the Packers as well here, just because it's always appealing getting, more than a field goal with Aaron Rodgers. Whether or not he has the personnel around him, he's still an elite quarterback. So I do like the Packers from a lean perspective, but I prefer the total here at over 50.5.
Yeah, Drew Dinsick, that was obviously a good bounce back for the Packers as 11.5-point favorites on Monday night. But I did get the sense of watching that game that there's definitely more in them. And you think that it could come to the boil on Sunday night.
Yeah, no, 100%. And honestly, my expectation of how the Packers were going to come into this season was in no way impacted by their week 1 performance.
They have one of those games every year. Every year.
It happens in Florida. It happens in California. Yeah. It's weird. I don't get it, but I'm completely willing to throw that one out. What we saw, particularly from them in the second half, I think is what we're to expect kind of from the Packers through the balance of this season. Their schedule is still tough. They're not going to be in the mix for the NFC title, in my opinion, because they're going to probably land in the 3 seed. But ultimately, I think they're a relatively known quantity. And San Francisco, I was kind of high on these guys throughout a lot of the preseason, just based on the, what perceived talent on this roster. And having seen them play 2 weeks now, and in particular last week's somewhat fraudulent win, I would say, they had the entire week away to kind of work on a game specific plan to attack that Philly team. And what they rolled out on offense was wildly uninspiring. Like Jimmy G's play in that game was, replacement level at best. All of these promised wrinkles of Trey Lance we didn't even see him. And on top of that, the skill position players that they are actually utilizing are replacement level guys. And so I have huge questions about how exactly San Francisco just rolls out and goes score for score with Green Bay in this game. That's effectively what you're seeing with the market right now. And a ton of this is anchored in the fact that the last 2 times we've seen Kyle Shanahan go up against Green Bay, they've pushed this team around. And if you're going to sit here and tell me the Green Bay defense is soft, We know this. The market knows this. Like, this is not a surprise. But the idea that you're going to push them around with the guys that you have that you're currently rolling out there with is a tall ask. Like, I think this team has taken some serious shots and some important losses, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, particularly in the secondary. We knew this secondary was a little thin to begin with, and then they lose Verrett for the season. So best of luck covering Devontae Adams in this game. I loved the wrinkles that Tanyan brought. Tanyan is playing like a real football player, and he was impressive on it because the Lions actually kind of covered well, I thought, and Aaron Rodgers still picked them apart in the middle of the field whenever he needed it. So there's a lot to like here about the way that the Packers offense matches up against the Niners defense. And even as someone who was very high on the Niners in that NFC title game 2 years ago and bet the Niners in the regular season in that matchup 2 years ago, a lot of it still revolved around them getting the lead and playing with the lead. That was a huge factor in both of those games, particularly the NFC title game. If the Niners score on if the Packers score on their first drive instead of punting on the other side of the 50, which is what I think they ended up doing, I think you probably have a little bit more competitive contest there. And so I don't see anywhere close to the Niners that I have expected on offense to this point in the season. And honestly, I really expected it last week when they had a concentrated week of preparation for that Philly game, and it just didn't show up. They don't have an ability to really attack you in the secondary. I don't think they're going to, and there are still some players here on this Green Bay defense who I think could make an impact. I don't think you're getting it past Jair Alexander in the passing game. So this really is going to be a one-dimensional run first, run only here for the San Francisco 49ers to get it done. And maybe that works, but if you're going to give me outside of a field goal, I will happily take the Packers in this spot.
Yes, 3.5 now. I know it was 4 yesterday. I think it's more likely to get to 3 than back to 4. Is just my kind of general take on this move at the moment. Suma, I know you haven't got a major opinion on this, and I don't think you've bet it, but well, you might have bet it right with the total. But in general, to follow up what the guys are saying there.
Yeah, so I agree with both of them. First of all, let's take about the Packers side. So power rating wise, I couldn't get to +3.5. So I think the Packers are a better team on a neutral field, but I still made a very heavy adjustment for the matchup of Kyle Shanahan going against that Packers defense, because that Packers defense is very concerning to me right now. I mean, the Saints moved the ball at will on the ground. There was no push up front, and then 1 week later they get whipped around from the Panthers. So that was the first key observation. And then on Monday Night Football, the Lions had no issue moving the ball on the ground, and they had no issue providing Jared Goff with some amazing pockets, until late in the third quarter. And the third point to me, which is very concerning, is that Matt LaFleur, after the game, said that he had to adjust the defensive game plan at halftime. He talked to his defensive coordinator and said, hey, what we're doing right now is not working. I want this to be changed. And then they changed their whole defensive game plan within halftime. And that to me is very concerning. And Kyle Shanahan usually picks these defenses apart like he did with the Packers in the past. So I made a very heavy adjustment there, but I still am not getting quite to 3.5. So I would side with the Packers there. And regarding the total, it was a great opening number. It got bet up to 50 right now. I would still lean over because that matchup really screams a lot of scores to me, because the Packers, I don't know how they do it, but they always find a way to produce solid offensive line play. They have center and left guard Elton Jenkins playing at left tackle right now. They have a bunch of just guys playing center to right tackle, and they looked really, really good in 2 games right now, even without David Bakhtiari. So I'm not majorly concerned regarding the matchup against the Niners defensive line. And in the passing game, I mean, Aaron Rodgers to that Davante Adams connection, I have no clue how the Niners are going to stop that. And if you combine that with Kyle Shanahan putting some scoring pressure on the Packers, I can see that game going over. And I would definitely still at this number lean rather over than under.
Yeah, I think like if you look at both of those bets, Packers Niners over 50.5, 2.0, and the Packers plus 3.5. I don't see how both of those get beaten. Is my general kind of thing. I think it's going to go one way or the other, and I think we could clip both. So let's select both accordingly. All right, Monday Night Football, Eagles, Cowboys in Big D. Yeah, potentially a good game. NFC East leadership on the line here. 2.7. You come back to Eagles on the money line. The Cowboys are 1.55. The Eagles getting a 3.5 point start at 1.96. That has been backed recently enough. There was +4 yesterday. So Eagles money is coming. 52 is the total. Drew Dinsick, we posed Dallas last week. Again, they had a few assists from guys in zebra-colored shirts, I would suggest. Is my diplomatic way of looking at that.
Benefit of the doubt here with the whistle.
Yeah. I don't know. Just saying, But Dallas are good for prime time. It's good to keep them in contention. What do you make of this one? I mean, I think Philadelphia was a bit of a disappointment last week with that performance against the Niners, but they're a growing team. In terms of America, where's the value so far in this one?
This is a tough one. It's a good game. I bet into it. I took the dog. I grabbed for my fair price here is between 3 and 3.5. So it's not a huge edge. I would expect this closes 3.5. There are a couple of sort of subtle, small things to point out in this matchup that I think favor Philly. Philly, granted, obviously, like Dallas is a very, very difficult handicap right now. They have a top 4 quarterback, period, who is performing at his, a peak of what we've seen. However, he's operating within an offense that conceptually wants to do some pretty minus CV stuff. And the offense themselves are torn between, well, we've paid this guy Zeke Elliott all this money, but the best player to have on the field every down is Tony Pollard. So we'll try to find a way to play both of them. They've convinced themselves that their defense is such a problem that they have to slow the game down. They have to play a little bit of ball control. And they're trying to just turn this into we're going to have the ball last and kick the game-winning field goal or hope our opponents miss the game-tying field goal. Like, they're playing chicken a little bit here. They're not like really like executing an offense that is worthy of how good Dak is playing and how good the receivers are. And that's playing with fire against the team in Philly, who I think is surprisingly well coached. I mentioned I didn't think that the Niners outcome was especially fair. That game was bizarre. If you go back to sort of the end of the second quarter where Philly gets stoned at the goal line and then the Niners come back and do a 97-yard touchdown drive to take a lead into halftime. Both of these teams play with the lead extremely well. Like they're safe. They slow the game down. They control pace depending on game state. Like when they're behind, they're going fast. When they're ahead, they're taking the air out of the ball. Ultimately, I think Philadelphia does have some advantages in terms of stopping whatever Dallas is trying to do. If they're trying to play that way, if they're trying to play ball control, if they're trying to play keep away, I think they're going to be in a little bit of trouble. If Dallas comes out and is aggressive, then I've lost already. But I haven't gotten the sense at all from what the coaching staff is saying that that's what we should expect. And then on the flip side, their defense got a huge boost last week from the pass rush generated by Micah Parsons, no doubt about it. But you're going up against a much stronger offensive line now overall, and Jalen Hurts is a more mobile quarterback. And I think realistically, you're gonna, that opens up opportunities for him to make plays with his legs on the ground. And people look at Hurts and assume that they kind of characterize him as in a certain level in terms of quarterback play, but he's a guy that moves the chains and adds extra dimension with his legs. And against a team like the Cowboys, who have shown an inability to manage that kind of quarterback, at least with this personnel, then I think that could be a problem ultimately. They have enough weapons in the passing game between the wide receivers and tight ends that they should find room to make some plays through the air, even though they are using a relatively short depth of target. I'm not running to the window to bet Eagles money line and saying that they're going to win this game. They're going to win the NFC East and they're totally underrated. But the margin between these two teams is pretty narrow, and it's going to take a little bit of home cooking and a little bit of another favorable game script from the referees, I think, in order to make this, the Cowboys cover easily. So the fact that I got 4, I'm happy with that. I ultimately, would expect this comes down to a field goal either way.
Rob Pizzola, Drew put it there, Dallas playing chicken. I wonder with Mike McCarthy, going back to his time at Green Bay, always struck me when he thought less, they were actually way a better team. But if this guy tries to get clever with his Dallas team and tries to play that kind of offense, it could go wrong against a potentially explosive Eagles offense. And that Eagles defense is pretty decent.
It is. They lose Brandon Graham, which is going to be a big loss for them in the middle. But I think this is really weird for me to say, and I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan. I don't know if people know that or not, but winning last week's game might actually be detrimental to the team going forwards because of the style in which they won the game. And you go back to week 1, they passed the ball a whole ton. They had a +3 turnover margin. They couldn't beat the Bucs. Now they go to week 2. They dominate time of possession. They're able to run the ball successfully. They really only score 20 points and kind of get lucky to win that game. But it will reinforce the idea that they need to run the ball going forwards. And this has not only been Mike McCarthy, this has been the Cowboys coaching staff now going on a decade where they feel the desire to run this type of offense. And I think that's detrimental to them going forwards. And I don't really downgrade the Eagles for the loss to the 49ers last week. I mean, if you look at that box score, they were very unfortunate to not win that game. They dominated EPA per play. They dominated in terms of yards per play. I believe they outgained the 49ers by 1.5 yards per play in that game. So the Eagles, to me, don't really get much of a downgrade. And there's a lot of optimism about them being able to score against this Cowboys defense. And yes, Drew made a great point. Parsons was able to get some pressure last week, but this is an upgraded offensive line that they're going up against this week. And I think the Eagles kind of can move the ball however they want it, because that's what we've seen so far this year against Dallas. Like if we think of the Cowboys, both games this season, Tampa Bay, Tom Brady moves the ball quite a bit, some fluky turnovers in that game. Last week, the Chargers don't even punt. There's a couple interceptions. One was a great play by Trayvon Diggs. The other, I don't actually know what Justin Herbert was thinking in the red zone, where he just threw it to a Cowboys defender with no Charger receiver in the area. So Dallas is really going to struggle to get off the field. They're going to continue to play this kind of ball control type of game, and I think that lends itself to the Eagles being worth a look in this game. I will talk about the total just as well here, because there's this fascination with primetime overs, and I know a lot of people are going to be running to the window to bet the over in this game because it's prime time. But I think Dallas is slowly going to be shifting towards an under team just because of all the running and the ball control that they're going to try to play. 52 is a high number, so I do lean to the under here, but I like the Eagles quite a bit at this price. I see this game coming down to the wire.
Suma, are you in agreement with the guys in this one?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the Cowboys defense by numbers looks a lot better than what their personnel would suggest. I mean, last week, as Drew and Rob mentioned, Micah Parsons was going against a guy named Storm Norton, who has played like 300 downs as an undrafted free agent. And this week he's going against Lane Johnson, arguably the best right tackle in the game right now. So it's going to be a completely different game up front for the Cowboys. And last week, the only pressure they got on Justin Herbert was over that left side, with Micah Parsons creating like 11, 13 pressures or whatsoever. And I really don't think how the Cowboys defense is going to get pressure and how they're going to cover those receivers while keeping an eye on Jalen Hurts when he's going to run. So I think that the Cowboys defense has really looked better than they really are. As Rob mentioned, the 3-0 turnover advantage in week 1. I think those were 2 crazy fumbles by those Bucs running backs. And I just think that the Eagles right now are at the point where they are such a, let's say, solid team, where they shouldn't get 4 points against a Cowboys team that is missing their best pass rusher, one very good right tackle. Amari Cooper is a little bit banged up. So I just feel that the Cowboys don't have a great matchup in the trenches. And if they keep to continue like they did last week, it's not the greatest recipe against that Eagles team.
All right, expect to be a close game. Eagles plus 3.5 is the pick at 1.95. All right, like it. Yeah, I don't trust Dallas yet. I don't. I think they're, yeah. All right, let's move on. Another sneaky good game on Sunday evening. Seahawks, Vikings. Current betting as we have it at matchbook.com is 1.89. You can back the Seahawks in the money line, 2.06 the Vikings. Vikings plus 1.5 at 1.96 and 56 is the total. And Rob Pizzola, we've already selected 3 road teams this week. Why are we selecting number 4 here? Why do we like Seattle?
Yeah, I think it's just a bit of a short price here in general. And I think when you look at both these teams, Seattle and Minnesota, they've played relatively the same strength of schedule so far this year when we compare to what the preseason expectations were for the teams that they played. So Seattle's played Indy, Tennessee, Minnesota's played Cincy and Arizona. So I think when we start to compare their EPA per play numbers so far through 2 games, we get a pretty good gauge of where these teams are at against similar competition. And when you strip out garbage time, like I like to do, and you look at offensive EPA per play, you have Seattle 10th in the league right now. You have Minnesota 19th. So marginally better offense from Seattle. When you look at defense, Seattle 6th, Minnesota 21st. So Seattle's performed a lot better on the defensive side of the ball as well. We know that there's not much home field advantage in the NFL anymore here. So when I'm making a number on this game, it's just very difficult for me not to arrive on the Seahawks side. And I know both teams are going to have very similar matchup advantages, right? This shapes up to be a shootout in some shape or form. Great wide receiver sets against secondaries or coverages that are below average in general. But when it comes down to things, you can give me all the statistics in the world on Kirk Cousins and you know how he's playing great now and so on and so forth. But it comes down to me betting on Russell Wilson against Kirk Cousins in kind of like a pick'em range, and I'm almost always going to take that bet on Russ. So to me, this line is a little bit short. I mean, I have this closer to 3 points. So yeah, I like the Seahawks in this spot.
Drew Dinsick, I think you're in agreement here. All about the Seahawks.
Yeah, I mean, I played the Seahawks, and what's funny is that the likelihood that they win by between 1 and 6 points is very high.
This is true.
Yeah, that's what they do. That's what they do.
This isn't gonna be one where you fire and then you walk away and you just check the score after and you're like, oh good, it won. No, this is gonna be one where it's gonna, crazy stuff is gonna happen. And credit to Minnesota's offense. Minnesota's offense is dynamic. They have a couple of absolute game breakers at the wide receiver position. Kirk Cousins is performing very well so far, but his coaching staff is limiting him in a lot of the same ways we were just going on and on about the Cowboys. This is a poorly coached team overall. The offensive scheme and concepts are ridiculous at times. It is amazing still too that during the Mike Zimmer era, on short downs when they need to get conversions, that they still go to the same handful of very predictable plays and get stoned time and time again in short yardage, especially when you have Dalvin Cook ripping off 5-10 yards at a time otherwise. And that it just kind of speaks to the overall kind of lack of creativity that they bring to the table in the high leverage moments. This is a team that just does not have the answers when the going gets tough. And on the flip side, Seattle with Russell Wilson is, one of the more dynamic offenses in the NFL. Currently, I have Seattle ranked kind of high overall. They're my 7th ranked team, kind of right there in the mix with San Francisco and the Rams, actually, which is funny that they're all in the and the Cardinals. I think I have them 7, 8, 9, 10. Honestly, in my power
division,
right now. But you just saw what Kyler Murray with a couple of weapons did to this Minnesota defense, and we expected the Minnesota defense was going to take a step forward this year, considering all the investments they made, bringing in some vets. It's been bad. It's been really, really poor. And excuse me, going up against Metcalf and Lockett with the cornerback, with the secondary issues that they have, the inability to generate any kind of consistent pressure or really get home to the quarterback is going to manifest in this one. You give Russell Wilson extra time when the play breaks down, he's going to find the home run ball against you in this game. And yes, there may be some people out there who are convinced that the Minnesota defense is going to be better now that they're at home and they're elevated by the crowd, blah, blah, blah. I am really not seeing it with this unit. I think this is pretty clearly a bottom half of the league, defense. And really, what's interesting to me, beyond just the fact that I like Seattle to win this game, is it's going to be fascinating to see how Mike Zimmer starts to deal with some of the pressure, because they should have won both of their first 2 games. They really were the better team against the Bengals. They let that game slip away, and they were, and honestly, it was that bad fumble in overtime that really cost them that game. And then, the game last week against the Cardinals, they outplayed them, period. And they should have won that game. They missed the field goal at the end that would have secured it. So it's, he is now 0-2 when he should be 2-0. The fans are going to be start clamoring for, well, why aren't we winning? Why is this defense not improving? And how he deals with that pressure is going to be fascinating. If he goes to where I think he goes, which is we need to run the ball more and keep our defense off the field, then you can pretty much put a bow on the Vikings season.
Yeah, and Summa, what if he doesn't do that? Because this game, if Minnesota play like they did in Arizona last week, how doesn't it clip 60? That'll be one way. Like, it's a high total. It's 56 at the moment. The only one higher is Kansas City and LA Chargers at 56.5. But there's a reason it's 56.
Yeah, this could absolutely be a track meet. To be honest, I just think that both teams are kind of built equally right now, where they have decent quarterback play. They are trying to create big plays down the field with two very good wide receivers. They don't have the best offensive lines. Both teams are kind of struggling in terms of success rate. So I'm saying consistently moving the ball. The Vikings always want to run the ball. They fail. They try to gain chunk plays through the air, and they basically pray that Dalvin Cook can break out some tackles. Same thing for the Seahawks so far, who have the fourth lowest success rate offensively, but a very high EPA per play value. They are consistently trying to feed Tyler Lockett down the field against single high coverages. Overall, I just think that this game could turn into a track meet. I think that the 56 right now is justified. If it comes down a little bit towards 54, which I don't expect, I might get interested. On the spread, I think I'm a little bit higher on the Vikings in general. I think I have the game around Seahawks -1s. So there's no value over there. And I still have a little bit more trust, I think, in Kirk Cousins feeding Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson against that, let's say, questionable Seahawks secondary. So to me, the spread is a complete coin flip, but I wouldn't be surprised if we really touch the 60s in this one.
Yeah, let's take Seattle. So, guys, generally 1.89. And, yeah, Russell Wilson against Kirk Cousins. Yeah, that's good enough for me. So, yeah, 4 road teams. Let's do for a quick recap of the bets we have so far. And don't forget, you can check out insights.matchbook.com 2 or 3 hours post-recording for a full recap of these bets and the latter bets. The Bucs at 1.83. Packers and Niners over 50.5 at 2.0. The Packers plus 3.5 at 1.92. The Eagles plus 3.5 at 1.95. Seahawks at 1.89. So, yeah, you're sensing a theme all about the road. There is no home field advantage anymore. We know this. Other bets. Drew Dinsick, you swept this section last week. So you have another two this week at pretty actionable numbers. What was the first one you gave me? You said you played the Bills over 46. It's 45.5 currently a matchbook at 1.96.
Yes, the market not feeling me on this one at all. So I saw a flat 45 at one of the market makers yesterday, and I was kind of taken aback. And honestly, Suma's point off the top about the Bills offense is absolutely true. Josh Allen is on red alert. Like, did he regress to 2019 Josh Allen, which would be incredible because the leap he took was so impossible. But we bought in. I certainly bought in. I still have the Bills as my third power ranked team in the NFL. But even if Josh Allen's not completing accurate passes down the field, we know that conceptually this offense is going to throw. And they are going up against the Washington football team defense that absolutely stinks in coverage, and for whatever reason cannot generate a pass rush to this point in the season. There's not a huge step up here from probably a bottom 5 offensive line unit in New York to bottom half in Buffalo. But you basically have Daniel Jones, but a better version of him, and Josh Allen taking the field with better weapons in the passing game. And I really don't see how the Bills don't get into the high 20s or low 30s in this game.
Better offensive coordinator too, by the way.
Better offensive coordinator. That's yes. Yeah. Like as far a gap as you can have between two offensive coordinators, that's your gap between Dable and Garrett. But ultimately, this the Bills defense, I think, is still a bit overrated by the market. Nothing impressive about what they're doing specifically. And I think Taylor Heineke's kind of got a live arm. I didn't expect to say that because I thought a lot of what we saw from him last year was fool's gold against some kind of random opponents. But he can at least he's taking shots. That may lead to turnovers. It may lead to touchdowns. But either way, I think points are in order in this one. So I played over 46 in that one. You can get over 45.5 pretty much everywhere now. And then I fired on the Falcons under against the Giants. I think the Giants being involved in an over game on primetime was kind of the perfect storm to kind of capture some value betting under their totals for the next couple of weeks. And nothing that I'm seeing from the Falcons looks like sustainable, high-scoring offense. They are somewhat lost, and Matt Ryan might be truly washed.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, he's got so many weapons too, and it's a bit of a pity. Rob, you also had a selection in that Washington game. You like the road team and the underdogs now.
I do. I like Washington. I think this is a pretty steep price for a Buffalo offense that hasn't got it together yet. But also, I do have concerns about the defense as well. And overall, I can't get to a number more than a touchdown here. But the thing about the Buffalo offense that is most concerning is not the scheme or anything like that. And watching the first two games of the year, they still have some receivers running wide open. This is against good defenses as well with the Steelers and Dolphins. It's just the accuracy of Josh Allen, who's just been unable to hit a lot of these throws. Last week, really no excuse, really good weather conditions in Miami. And I know people look at that final score and be like, oh, it was an absolute blowout. What are you talking about? But I think there's legitimate concerns for this offense going forwards. On the defensive side of the ball, we can talk about how great they've played, but it's come against the Steelers offense and the Dolphins offense. Like, we haven't really learned anything about this Bills defense whatsoever. And I know it's just Taylor Heineke, but the guy is capable. I mean, he does have a penchant to throw like into tight coverages and these risky throws over the middle of the field, but he throws the ball. He can work it downfield. So I think this is just too many points. I really can't arrive at this number yet. I think we're kind of just valuing the Bills like they are the Bills of last season right now. And I don't agree with that whatsoever. So I think Washington above a touchdown is a good play.
Yeah, currently available 1.95 matchbook. Sumi, you're looking Thursday night game. So obviously we have Carolina going on to Houston to face a backup quarterback. You like them in a teaser double, or it might even be close to moneyline double. It probably won't get there, but who are you pairing them with?
Yeah, I think it's International Teaser Week. Lots of great legs to grab. I was praying for a Carolina -7 in this matchup, but that was wishful thinking, I guess. I think that the Panthers right now have such a robust defense going against Davis Mills on a bad Texans team with some injuries. I just don't see lots of scenarios in which the Texans can come up with a win here, even though I think that I'm not really inspired by that Sam Darnold offense yet. But I think the Panthers are just a better team, and so I'm throwing them into a teaser with the Ravens against the Lions. I think the Ravens are currently laying -7.5. So you can pair Carolina -2 with Baltimore -1.5. Two road legs, but two really good matchups where I can't find a lot of reasons why the home side should come up as a winner.
Can't believe you're not buying in the Lions, man. Can't believe it. All right, best bets time. Suma, stick with you for this one, mate. What's the top selection for this week for you, boy?
The Bucs. The Bucs up to -2.5. I think we can get them at -1.5 right now at Matchbook. I will just fire on the Bucs with Tom Brady at this number against a team that I think is a little bit overrated right now. I think the Bucs offense will get it done, and that's my best bet for the week.
You can play up to -2 as you recommended, but I'm going to just put it in at 1.83 because I selected in the other half of that just to keep it consistent what we have, just in case they do win by one and we get clipped on the other side. Drew Dinsick, your top selection this week, Matt? think you're on mute, Drew.
Ooh.
Did pretty well, to be fair. We got to 50 minutes. It's good.
I'll take the Packers as my best bet, and I'll mix it up on you. We'll take the Packers money line. I think they went outright against San Francisco in primetime.
Curveball. Like it. Let's get a price now in a second. Rob, your best bet we didn't discuss in the main slate at all. So you went with the Patriots for the total last week. You're doing the same this week, but in reverse.
I am. I'm taking the over in the Pats and the Saints. I think you look at this number, 41.5 should be exclusively for teams with horrible offenses or great elite defenses. Like, we're looking at the NFL this year, the average points in the NFL is just over 48 points a game. And you're telling me the Patriots and Saints, with the offenses that they field, which are in no means horrible, are basically a touchdown worse? I don't buy into it. I think the Patriots defense is a little bit overrated right now. They finished, I believe, 22nd in EPA per play last year. I do like their defensive front seven for sure, but I do not consider this an elite defense yet by any stretch of the imagination, having played the Jets and Dolphins. So I think that unit's a little bit overvalued. And I think overall, you just look at this game, Saints defense is hurting with injuries. Saints offense, probably very undervalued right now, coming off a game against the Panthers where, I mean, they couldn't really get much going. I think that was them playing at the low end of their range. So ultimately, this seems like a very low number for me in this day and age in the NFL. So I like the over quite a bit here.
Yeah, wouldn't take much to get that number clipped at all. 1.91 is the price for the Pats Saints, over 41.5. All right, guys, that's it. Week 3 in the books. My thanks to Rob, Pizzola, Fabian Sommer, and Drew Dinsick as ever, gentlemen. Great effort put forth. 3 weeks in a row, best bets.
I'm putting us on. I'm putting us out there. Give me like a 2.6-ish on the money line for the Packers.
Yeah, you're kind of. It was 2.56, but yeah, we're taking it. So if the Packers lose by 3, 2, or 1, you know you're going to get in the air for us if these two guys get it. You know,
if you ruin the perfect record, Drew, like that's it. Right?
You know.
You've been out there.
Sully is doing a fantastic job of getting this information out there. So I think we're all probably doomed as it is. But you know, it's going to be a fun week 3. I like our looks.
Yeah, I do too. Big time. Yeah. All right. Big theme there with the road teams. So yeah, we'll be back again next Wednesday. Don't forget. If you're enjoying this content, please like, review, give us nice words, and check out insights.matchbook.com for a full recap of these bets and all of our other selections from the other podcast. Until next Wednesday, bye for now.